Hello, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking over in depth the top 10 supports for patch 9.8. As always, you can find timestamps in the description if you don't have time to watch the whole thing, and you can also access this Google Doc if you want to read along as well. And I also have a little mini guide with each one of these and a 1 through 5 rating system, recommended runes, recommended items, and if I have an in-depth guide available for the champion, then I have that link as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So my top 10 in order right now are Lulu, Nami, Sona, Nautilus, Janna, kind of in the tier 1, and then Pyke, Leona, Morgana, Thresh, and Tahm, Kench. And at the very end, we'll talk about some tier 3 and some honorable mentions, but I'm going to spend most of the time talking about those champions just so you know what's coming up. Okay, first up, Lulu. So I've been talking about Lulu trending up for quite a bit now, and a lot of this is based around the way that the meta has shifted. And Lulu has a few unique properties to her that I think make her particularly strong with the kinds of champions that are getting played right now. First of all, she's a very high scaling enchanter because she adds several multipliers to an AD carry to make them even stronger than they already are. Probably the most multipliers of any enchanter right now after Janna got nerfed last year. So what do I mean by multipliers? Well, first of all, her Whimsy, when you put it on an AD carry, it's going to give them an extra 45% attack speed. So this is particularly good on champions that are going to be going a Blade the Ruin King Gensu's type of build, which is a lot of champions out there, even a Gensu's type of build. Anyone that has any sort of special on-hit interactions. So that covers a lot of ground. That's going to include, obviously, Vayne is a really prominent one, but also things like Twitch, Kog'Maw, Varus, Kai'Sa, all of these are very strong right now. And it's also really good on Jinx because with her rockets, and especially if she goes Hurricane, then she wants to fire those out as fast as possible so she gets even more of those on-hit interactions. I mean, pretty much every AD carry is going to like attack speed, but particularly those types of champions are going to love it. And those are the most popular and the highest win percentage champions right now. It's even still pretty good on champions like Caitlyn, Sivir, and those types of things. And even on someone like Jhin, it's still all right. Like, yeah, he doesn't benefit as much from the attack speed. It's nice, but he really does like the move speed. So he can run people down pretty easily. So it's pretty good on almost any AD carry. Adds a lot of extra scaling there. And then her passive gives a ton of extra on-attack damage as well, which a lot of people forget about this. You know, you're level 9, even with 0 AP, that's 63 on-attack damage. It's not on hit, so it doesn't double proc on Gensu's, but it does proc every time you auto-attack. And if we look here at the calculator, on hit is calculated at about 25 gold each. Once again, this isn't exactly on hit. This will just give you kind of a ballpark about just how powerful that is. That's an extra 1575 value there. And if we look down here at this attack speed, 45% attack speed is also valued at 25 each. So we got times 25 plus, what was the other one, 1575? It's about 2,700 gold values. That's like you're giving your AD carry an extra 9 kills worth of power in the mid-game off of this, right? So that's very, very powerful. So I don't think anyone else can match that in terms of multiplier. Janna gives out up to 40 extra AD when she maxes her shield, and AD is valued at, I believe, 35 each. So Janna hands out 1,400, which is about half of what Lulu hands out. Janna's buff that she gives also... they lose that whenever the shield breaks. That's not the case with Lulu. Whenever you shield somebody and give them this pix, it stays even if the shield breaks. So they did lower the time that the shield is up for 2.5 seconds, but it still stays on the target for, I believe, up to 6 seconds. Yes. So regardless of whether it breaks or anything that's happening, they're going to get this buff for 6 seconds. And conveniently, when you get 40% CDR, that means you can have 100% uptime on this. Because it's going to go down to a 6-second cooldown on your E. So, super powerful, great modifier. AD carries are in an amazing spot right now. They're very, very strong. They can determine games a lot. I know that seems almost like a meme when you look at some of the AD carries on my game from the streams, right? And check out the streams. They're a lot of fun. They start around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time most nights. We have a wonderful community. It's a lot of fun. It's very chill. We have a good time. But in all honesty, they are very strong. If we look right now, there are a ton of AD carries that have a really high win rate right now. Aside from these like kind of troll picks here. Look at Jinx, you know, almost 55%, 54.5. Ashe is a little shaky in my book, but she still has a high win rate. You know, Twitch, 54% win rate almost. Misfortune, you know, 53.5. Sivir, Draven, Kog'Maw, Vayne, all of these are sitting around like 53 plus, and they're all super popular. So almost every AD carry, in fact, is overperforming. There's only 3 that are under 50%. So I think AD carry is probably the most powerful role right now. If you're looking broadly about how many different champions are really strong, there are definitely some very strong picks in the jungle, like Jarvan, Hecarim, and there's some strong picks top and mid. But it feels like almost every AD carry, at least most of the mainstream ones, are actually doing very well statistically right now. So this is a great time to pick an enchanter like Lulu, who buffs up the AD carry so much. She's also very good against divers. The main reason for that is wild growth. It's on a very low cooldown, just 110 seconds, and it gives you an instant infusion of health and knocks somebody up for 0.75 seconds, and it applies a slow. So she's pretty good against divers, and she's very good with divers as well. So when that Jarvan dunks somebody, you can knock them all up for the 0.75 and give him that slow so that he can stay attached to them. Same thing with Hecarim. He dives in there. You can use wild growth on him to help out. Or, conversely, if the Hecarim's diving your AD carry, you can give them that burst of health to help protect them. Or the Jarvan, you can give them the burst of health and disrupt so that they don't get one-shotted. So pretty good against assassins as well for that reason. And the Whimsy, you can apply this to an assassin or just anyone that's trying to dive your backline as well. And basically it's like a 2.25 second point-click stun. So that makes her very versatile in that sense also. And if you want people who benefit really heavily from movement speed, you can even put this on someone like a Hecarim or a Jarvan to help them engage, to help them, get in there. And Olaf is super good with this. Obviously, Hecarim is the best one because he gets extra damage based on his movement speed, and he's very popular right now. Also really good on someone like Irelia, that wants to run people down, get in those extra auto attacks, help them stick. So she's just very versatile, right? She's scales super hard with AD carries, but then she's also really good both with and against divers, who are very popular right now. Also, she has really good wave clear for an enchanter. Most enchanters do not have good wave clear, but if you put 3 points in Glitter Lance in the lane, you can get priority pretty easily. Push in, get some towers, go contest scuttles, go get dragons, get better back timings. So it's really nice. And it's pretty good harassment, too. I mean, 170 damage. Like, Lulu will shock you with the damage that she puts out early. Because you can just keep this at level 1, which is what I've been doing, is keep this at level 1 just so you do a little bit of damage, just so you can attach picks to people. And then you can do like 3 points of Glitter Lance in lane. Does 170 damage. And don't forget, you're also going to be doing airy damage, scorch damage, and your own passive attack damage. Even at level 5, people will forget this. That's 40 on-hit damage from you personally when you're sitting there auto-attacking them. So she does a shocking amount of damage in the early game. It catches people off guard a lot of times. And then that's the pretty good wave clear as well, like I said. So she scales well. Another reason to go this, like that I've been switching to go 3 points of this in the laning phase, is because it's way cheaper. It only goes up by 5 mana cost per level, whereas this goes up to 80. And that can be very expensive if you rush Ardent Sensor, which is what you should be rushing on Lulu most of the time. So this makes the cost a little bit more manageable. It also has really far range, so 925, so you can actually attempt to harass people from pretty far away, even if you can't hit them with the E, versus the E is really short range, only 650, so sometimes it can be very dangerous to try to walk up and harass with this. So this is cheaper. It's a better harassment tool. It has similar damage. It actually has more damage if you hit them with it, 170 versus 140. And it doubles up as wave clear. And it can hit multiple targets in a team fight. So all of that means that this is a pretty strong ability, and I like it. Okay, so Lulu, going to be the best if you have a hyperscaling AD carry on your team. The one sort of drawback to Lulu, however, is that she doesn't have a heal, per se. And if you're not getting a lot of this shield, then she's not going to have a ton of shielding either. So that means that she has the potential to get bullied out by things like Sona or Nami, particularly Nami in the laning phase. And that can be a little rough. But you can take biscuits early on in the inspiration tree. And usually you can survive the lane for the most part. But you're going to have really good gank assist. You know, if the ganker's coming in and you whimsy the AD carry, or so that we can catch up to the gank, or if someone wants to run up the lane like a Hecarim and you whimsy him, they're going to be able to run him down. So she has very nice gank assist, but she can get bullied early. But she's going to scale harder, at least harder than Nami, because Nami has CC, which is really nice, but she doesn't have anything that buffs her AD carry. Her AP ratios are pretty good, and she's like all right with plus healing and shielding, but you're going to outscale Nami as Lulu. So if you can survive the laning phase, depending on the matchup with the AD carries, you can usually make it work. Sona's a bit tougher. Sona's easier to gank, but at the same time, Sona does scale very well off of like team fight stats. She's not going to boost up a hyper carry as much as Lulu will, but she is very, very good at team fighting. So those are two kind of tough matchups, and they're both very popular. But overall, I think she can manage it. So you're just going to want to go Airy, Mana Flow, Absolute Focus, and Scorch. You can switch Scorch over for Gathering Storm if you think you're going to lose the lane. And then usually Footwear, and then you can either go Cosmic Insight or Biscuits, depending on how tough the matchup is. You don't have to go Revitalize on Lulu. That's something that a lot of other enchanters are kind of priced into because it's so powerful with plus healing and shielding. But Lulu's not that great with plus healing and shielding. She's okay, but the only thing that benefits from that is help picks, and you're not going to be leveling that up anyways. I guess if you want to go for a more heavy plus healing and shielding build, you can. But this is an infusion of health. This is not a heal. So Revitalize has no interaction with this. So, you know, you're really not getting a lot out of Revitalize. Bone Plating is okay, but I think really being able to go Inspiration is going to give you that little bit of extra gold infusion in the mid-game to help you scale a little bit better. So I think that's really solid. Because she also doesn't scale that great with plus healing and shielding, it does open you up to buy something like a Zeke's, potentially. So she's going to be better against especially AD assassins if you go for that build than a lot of other enchanters, because she can polymorph them and she can wild growth to help keep herself alive or an ally alive. And then you can double down by going with the Zeke's, which sounds a little weird on her. You don't always want to get that, but if your AD carry is just really rocking, don't forget that damage from Zeke's is on hit every time they attack. So they're going to be doing 15% bonus magic damage on attack, which, you know, isn't a ton, but if they have like even 100 AD, that's 15 extra on hit magic damage, and you're increasing their attack speed with Whimsy. You're going to have Ardent Censor, so that's going to increase their attack speed, and a lot of these champions are going to have natural ways to increase their attack speed as well. So that actually does add up quite a bit, and it gives you some more survivability. So that can be really good if you want to double down with a double on hit build to help out anyone that's going to be getting Ginsu, or if your AD carry is really far ahead, or if that Zed's just like 5-0 mid lane and you need some armor. That's a decent option. A lot of other enchanters don't want to do that because they'd be sacrificing something like, you know, Redemption or like Athene's Unholy Grail or something like that. And she can get those items too. I'm just saying that she has the option to get Zeke's a lot better than other champs just because she already has so many great interactions with on-hit in her kit, and because she has a very low cooldown that you can use proactively. So you can use this right at the start of a fight if you want to on someone who's diving, or you can use it on your own AD carry if they're getting dove. Versus something like, you know, Sona is going to have a 140-second cooldown, and you kind of need to look for the right spot to start that ult. And then Janna, of course, would not want to get Zeke's because you actually push people out. You disengage whenever you activate it, so you don't want to use it proactively. And it's on a really long cooldown, 150 seconds. So I think that she has some unique build paths with that can double down and help your AD carry snowball even harder if you want to. But I would definitely get mobility boots on her. She is kind of slow to begin with, and you really want to be... You can Whimsy yourself to run around faster, but it's a much better combo if you can run along with mobility boots and then Whimsy your AD carry or whoever else you're trying to boost along with you. So you could move as a unit and rotate around the map a lot faster. So I really like the mobility boots a lot. And you want to go Ardent Censor first because it has such great synergy with your W and with your on-hit from your picks. So you want to go Ardent first on her. You can go something like Athene's later on if you want to. She's not going to be as great with that as Nami or Sona, but she'll still be all right. So I think Lulu, that's something that a lot of people are really sleeping on. She has been creeping up lately. She was at 47 or 48% a few patches ago, and I think she's up to like 51. So I've looked at some other tier lists, just kind of skimmed them, and a lot of people are now finally saying that Sona or Nami are really good. I'm like, welcome to the club, guys. I've been talking about this for like 5 patches. I'm glad y'all caught up. But yeah, the enchanters are really strong right now, but Lulu is often the forgotten one. She does have a lower win rate than some of the others, but it's because she's relatively hard to play. She's unforgiving. You know, if you mess up in lane, you don't have a heal to help you out. And sometimes it can be tough to decide whether you want to polymorph or whether you want to speed up an engager or whether you want to boost up your AD carry. So you have some kind of tricky decisions there. And it's really easy to misclick in team fights too. You can try to shield an ally and accidentally damage an enemy, or you could try to polymorph an assassin and accidentally speed up an ally. So there are lots of oopsies that are possible with Lulu. You can accidentally shield a minion if they're like, you're trying to shield your ally and they're standing in a minion wave. So because 2 of your spells can attack both enemies and allies, it's cool because it makes them versatile, but at the same time, it opens up a lot of room for mechanical mistakes. So she doesn't have a lot of skill shots, but there's definitely a lot of opportunities for misclicks, and so that makes her a bit harder to play than many of the other enchanters. Okay, so that's Lulu. That's my case for Lulu. I think she's potentially the best blind pick right now just because she's so good with so many champions that are strong right now. She just helps the carries carry harder. But, you know, I do still think that Nami and Sona are phenomenal as well. Okay, so let's talk about Nami here real quick. I talk about Nami every patch, so I'm not going to spend forever doing this. I just want to hit the highlights. She's still going to be really good, and what makes Nami special is that she has a lot of CC for an enchanter. A lot of different kinds of CC. So, obviously, her Aqua Prison is really strong. 1.5 seconds with just 1 point in this is a really long amount of CC. It can also hit multiple targets, so you can potentially bubble 2 or 3 people in a team fight. So that's really handy. It's on a pretty low cooldown, like 12 seconds for CC. Is not that bad for something that's that powerful. Now, it is something that can shoot over things too. So you can shoot it like through a minion wave in theory, but you have to hit them. It's not a line skill shot. So it's kind of difficult to aim. You know, they can step forward and dodge it, or they can sidestep it and dodge it a little bit easier than some of the other skill shots. So that's important to keep in mind, but it's really, really powerful. If you get good at this bubble, it can completely win team fights. If you get a triple bubble or something in a team fight, your team's probably going to dominate. Her ebb and flow is the best trading tool in the game. I think for the laning phase, you just walk up and just spam this on them over and over again. It's got 725 range. It's really nice. It damages the enemy and heals you. And if you rush Athene's first, which you should be doing, then you should have enough mana to just keep spamming this over and over again. So this is very, very oppressive in the laning phase. It's really nice. And then Tidecaller's Blessing is deceptively really strong because it can effectively slow them for up to 3 seconds, right? So they get 3 shots of this, and the slow lasts for 1 second. So it just pretty much feels like it slows them forever. Like they just cannot get away from this. So this is really awesome, particularly on someone like Vayne who wants to be able to chase people down and kite people effectively. So it's really good on them. It's very good on Lucian as well because his double shot will apply this twice. It's nice on Ezreal, especially before he gets Iceborne Gauntlet. Or in particular, if he's going Trinity Force, this is amazing because he's still going to get that slow on his Q whenever he auto-attacks, even if he goes Trinity instead of Iceborne. So that's going to be handy. And then, of course, the wave is very nice, low cooldown, and has a really long range. Now, the thing to keep in mind that a lot of people that don't play support don't understand about this is this moves very, very slowly. Like people, unless you push them up against a wall or make it difficult for them to sidestep, if you just try to throw this at a group of people out in the open, they're probably going to dodge it because it just crawls along the ground. It's very, very slow. So she's got a nice kit, particularly in the early game. Great bullying, great CC with Aqua Prison, Tidecrawler, and Tidal Wave. A lot of different tools there to stop people. One reason that I've dropped her down a little bit is there are a lot of champions right now that can ignore some of this CC or get around these mechanics. So particularly like Hecarim, you're going to have a hard time hitting Hecarim with Aqua Prison to begin with because he's moving so quickly, and if he's watching for it, he can just sidestep it. Or even if it's about to hit him, he can use his ult and jump through it and get onto the back line to get onto your AD carry. So he has 2 different ways he can get around that. Because it's not a skill shot, once again, he might even be able to just run in front of it. So it's hard to hit him to begin with because he's fast, but then, you know, like I said, he can be really squirrely and hard to nail down too. People can also really easily flash this. So when people are trying to roll in, you know, it's very obvious that it's coming towards them, and they have all day to try to flash it if they want to. So you can have the Rek'Sai flash it and get under you and knock you up. Versus like line skill shots, yes, they can flash those, but sometimes it's going to be a little bit harder to do that. You know, like a Sona ult, I believe, is much harder to flash than an Aqua Prison, for example. So that can be kind of rough. And then champions, you know, like Jarvan can get around it as well. So just anything that has high mobility, it's really hard to hit this on Vayne or Lucian because they can sidestep it. So against highly mobile champions, this can be difficult to land. And then also, she does not have any sort of steroids for an AD carry. The closest it's going to get is Tidecaller's Blessing, which is very limited. I mean, it does like okay damage, but it's not the same as the Pyke's damage. It's not the same as like a Janna shield. So her scaling is limited. It's basically the CC. I mean, any point in the game, if you get a triple bubble, that's really good. But it's very situational. You have to use your CC extremely well, and really you need to get ahead early because you're going to get outscaled by Janna, Lulu, Sona, and Soraka. So she is very strong. She has a high win rate. I still think she's amazing. She is a bit safer than a lot of the other AD carries or a lot of the other supports because she has so much CC and because her ranges are really nice. I mean, it's 875 on a bubble, 725 on the W, 800 on the E. And just if you compare that to someone like Sona's auras are I think like 400, Soraka's heals are 450 or 500, I believe. Even Lulu's shield, her E is 650. So that means you have to get a lot closer in order to do what you need to do in team fights, and that means it's more likely you're going to get hit. You know, that assassin might be able to flash on you, or you might get hit by a bunch of AoE that's like aimed at somebody else. So it's just a lot more dangerous. So she can play back further than almost anybody except for maybe Janna. Janna has really nice range on her stuff too. But she is going to be a little bit safer than Lulu, Sona, and Soraka, so she does have that going for her. So just Airy, Mana Flow, Absolute Focus, Gathering Storm, and then Bone Plating and Revitalize. You can switch this up for Scorch if you think you're going to dominate the lane. But yeah, I would probably keep Absolute Focus because you keep yourself healed up most of the time in fights, and so you get a lot of extra AP off of that. Now, I will note, some people have asked me about Guardian, and this goes for Lulu as well. You need to go Airy because it helps you trigger Ardent Sensor, and it helps you, it gives you a nice shield, but also helps you trigger Ardent Sensor on multiple people. So if you E your AD carry, then that will put the Airy on them, and that will trigger Ardent Sensor, so they get that buff. And then you can use your W, put it on the front line, it's going to bounce around and potentially give 2 more people the Ardent Sensor trigger. So it's very important for spreading out your Ardent among multiple people. In addition to Airy just being really OP late game, it has like up to 80 base shield, and it's influenced by Revitalize, plus healing and shielding. It has a 0.25 AP ratio, so it ends up being a massive, massive shield. I've done the math on this in the past, and it basically, you know, depending on the champion, usually gives you at least like an effective 30% plus healing and shielding in many situations. So it's really, really powerful. So you do not want to go Guardian, okay, on Nami. You need to find another solution. If you're worried, man, they have a Zed, man, that's really strong. Just figure out something else, right? You can get, I would rather see you get Ninja Tabby or even something like a Zeke's, which is more comfortable on Lulu, but you could even get that on Nami if there's a Zed that's like hyper fed and you're really worried about that. But you have to have Airy because she need, like, all of this stuff is really good. She has nice AP ratios. Absolute Focus is amazing, especially early on for extra harassment. Mana Flow is mandatory for mana early on, and then Airy, like I said, is really strong in and of itself, and particularly its interaction with Ardent Sensor is something that you have to have. Lulu, Airy is also really important because that's going to allow you just more options with how you distribute Airy. So you could put your W on your AD carry, and then that's going to give them the Airy proc in addition to the attack speed, and then you can put your picks on somebody else on the front line if you need to shield somebody who's about to die. So that's handy. A lot of times, if you know, you're going to want to put your W and your E on your AD carry if they're doing well, so they do that extra picks damage, the on-hit damage, but it just gives you a lot more flexibility. So always Airy, never Guardian, not an option here. I mean, maybe you could think of like 1 in 100 where you might want to do it, and maybe there have been some pros trying it out at some point, I'm not sure. But in general, you really, really want to be going Airy. Okay, let's keep cranking. So Sona, highest win rate champion right now, very powerful. I have her slightly lower than some other people might, and that's just because she's really dangerous. Like, yeah, if you get to do your thing, you know, she has the highest scaling in the game. People are even playing her as AD carry right now, highest scaling among supports. And I talk about this all the time, but a lot of it is just because of just how much. I would not be surprised if she gets nerfed here sometime soon, not only because of the AD carry shenanigans, but she just has so much scaling. So this, you know, is going to give you baseline. If you hit 5 people with this, that's going to be 625 base, and then you can hit this for 2 people for a total of 220. So that's going to be, you know, what, 845 baseline healing and shielding on this. It's on a 4-second cooldown, and it's going to have a 2.0 AP ratio, which is just insane in team fights. You can just keep spamming this over and over again. I wouldn't be surprised if they just take this out off of a nerf, because why does she need this? Why does she need a free 25% cooldown on her abilities? It's just like excessive power. So if they were going to nerf her, I would take this away first, just because that would only hit her late game. And then maybe drop just the AP ratio a little bit here. Maybe drop this down to like 0.2. I mean, that would be a significant drop, but she'd still have really high base values. I don't know. But that's just too much. And then this over here is going to have a 2.0 AP ratio if you have 5 people. So 3 times 5, that gives you 1.5. And then an extra... actually, that's 2.5 over here. So this is 2, and this is 2.5. That's right, that's right. And it's a lot of extra damage. I mean, even if you hit 2 people with this, it's 320. So she just has insane numbers, insane scaling with AP, but do not build AP on her. I talked about this a lot in my Sona bot lane video. She's extremely good with Athenes, and it's a much, much better like bargain on her than getting something like a Seraph's Embrace or a Lichbane, which are way too expensive to afford on a support budget. Athenes is so good on her because she does a lot of damage with her Hymn of Valor, and she's constantly able to spam out these heals and shields, so you're going to distribute all of those blood charges like almost instantaneously as you go through. And people have asked me, well, how does Athenes really work? The best way to think about it, especially on someone like Sona, just think 35% of the damage that you do is going to get converted to healing to your allies. That's the best way to think about it. It is pre-mitigation damage, so that means that it's the damage you would do before checking armor and magic resist of your opponents, so it's even better than the actual damage they take. But that's just the easiest way to think of it. Just think of 35% of the damage that you do ends up healing allies. So with something like this, you hit them for 320. You know, you hit them with a little bit of extra bonus damage here, so that's going to be 350. You have some kind of AP, whatever, it's going to be 400 or 450. 1/3 of that, if it's 450, is going to be 150. So every time you press this, then you're getting a free extra 150 heal on this. That's higher than its base heal. So it ends up being insane. And that extra healing that you get off of Athenes also scales with Revitalize, also scales with plus healing and shielding. So it ends up being pretty wild. And it's also triggered by Aerie. So that item's just insane on her. And then Ardent Sensor is amazing as well because the AoE shield that you give out, like anyone that touches that shield is going to get the Ardent Sensor buff. So it's super easy to comfortably put this on, you know, 4 or 5 people in a team fight. So they just have permanent Ardent Sensor, and you're just permanently just stacking up all of this extra healing with Athenes. Once she gets that, once she gets Athenes plus Ardent Sensor, it's just almost impossible to lose a team fight. Redemption's really strong too on her as well. But she just has such insane scaling, and she has a lot of presence in lane, especially if you're not against an all-in. You know, she's got 825 reach with this, and then it empowers her auto attacks. She can heal through. If you take a bad trade or your ally takes a bad trade, you can kind of heal through it. It is a bit expensive, but you are going to be getting a lot of mana regen early, so you might be able to manage it. So she's great. So why is she down a little bit lower? Well, a lot of it is meta-related that I just mentioned before. There are a lot of divers out there. Jarvan loves to see a Sona when he's ganking because he's just going to dunk you and you're going to die if you don't have flash. Same thing with Hecarim. Similar thing with Rek'Sai if she gets behind you. So there are a lot of the most powerful junglers right now are very gank-heavy junglers, and they will love to come down and camp you if you're playing Sona. Sona is also going to be weaker to things like Nautilus, who's very popular right now. I've been advocating Nautilus for like 5 patches as well. I've been saying he's really strong. He has been buffed a couple of times since I started recommending him, for sure. So he is stronger than he was. But I think he's always been underestimated in the bot lane. I mean, dude has a lot of CC. He has good wave clear. We'll talk about Nautilus more here in a second, but he's going to be really popular right now. He's getting hyped up in all the all caps videos, so expect to see a lot of Nautilus in your games. You're still seeing a lot of Pykes. You're seeing a lot of Leonas. There are a lot of dive champions coming out right now, and she has virtually no dive defense, both for you or your ally. Like, the only thing you can really do if, you know, someone dunks your ally is if your ult is off cooldown. You can ult him, which is good. You know, it's an 1.5 second stun, but that's basically a Nami bubble, you know, if you hit it. Right? But this is a 140-second cooldown instead of a 12-second cooldown. So she has a lot more limited. And if you're only using this on one person, sometimes that can be really rough. So she has a lot of raw power if she's left alone, but she really can't do a ton to protect yourself, definitely, but even to protect your allies. Like, the best it's going to get is you just get them with raw healing and shielding. You can hit the diver with a green shot here and reduce their damage a little bit, and that's nice. You've got your little stun here on a long cooldown, but it's nowhere near the same kind of protection that someone like Lulu or Nami or, definitely someone like Janna is going to be able to offer against all of these divers. So if your AD carry picks something like Jinx and the enemy is picking like Pyke, Jarvan, or something like that, or Leona Hecarim, or any, combination of popular champions right now, that could be a big problem. So, yes, if the team fight goes long, as I always say, if the fight goes longer than 5 seconds and Sona's involved and it's a 5v5 and she's not dead and no one else is dead, you win the fight. So she's kind of like the default, just super powerhouse. She's like the equivalent of like the mega high DPS that just doesn't have a lot of utility. She's just the inverse of that, mega high healing with low utility. So she's got some, like I said, she's got some stuff. She's got an AoE stun. She can, speed people up with her E, and she's got a lot of utility because of how she works with Ardent Censer and Athene's Unholy Grail. But it's just not the same amount of like CC and protection that some other champs offer. So you're still going to want to do the standard Airy down to Gathering Storm, and then Bone Plating and Revitalize. You can go for Scorch if you think you're going to win the lane. And then Mobility Boots, Watcher. I always start with Athene's because it gives so much extra mana regen, and you really need that mana regen. And she abuses it so well in the laning phase, particularly with the heavy AP that it gives. So, and it has 30 magic resist on it. That's something a lot of people forget, but that's very good when you're facing other enchanters in particular. If you're up against Lulu, Nami, or whatever, like 30 magic resist is going to help you a lot when they're trying to harass you. So that can be pretty handy. Okay, I mean, maybe you should go with Athene's if you're like Lulu and you are matched up against an enchanter. Maybe Athene's is not that bad, just because it would give you sustain with the Chalice of Harmony early on, and then it would also give you some magic resist, so maybe that's something to consider. Okay, so Sona, very, very powerful. The most powerful in the abstract. If you get to sit there and just do your thing, nobody focus fires you, you're probably going to win. Or if you have a lot of tanks on your team that can peel and do all of the stuff that Sona lacks. If they have the CC, if they have the peel, if they're helping to protect your AD carrier, they're locking up their divers so their divers can't do their thing, she's very strong. So if you have something like a Sejuani on your team, if you have the Jarvan on your team, just things like that, then she's going to be really, really good. Okay. So Nautilus, I've been on this Nautilus hype train. He's been on my tier 1 or tier 2 for the last 5 patches. He's just an amazing champion. I think he's just an easier to play Thresh. He doesn't have as much peel as Thresh does, but I think he has a lot more consistency. He doesn't have as high of a win rate, but I think it's because just a lot of people don't play him correctly. Now, he is fairly squishy early on, so keep that in mind. Like, this Titan's Wrath is okay, but it's a very limited defensive steroid compared to some of the other steroids out there, and his base stats are going to be lower, right? So, his armor is a little bit lower. He has 39 armor. Things like Braum and Alistar are going to start with 44 armor, but it's obviously going to be higher than an enchanter, but lower than a lot of the primetime tanks, the like super hardcore tanks. But they did just buff his staggering blows. So now you get the extra 0.25 seconds early, which is massive. I mean, pre-6, like, that's an extra 50% slow time on your stagger, so that's really, really good. And they lowered the on-hit cooldown on this. I think it used to be 8 seconds. Now it's 6. You can effectively get this off usually twice in a fight on the same target. So that's really handy. His dredge line does a lot of damage early on. Doesn't cost a lot of mana. You can also use this to escape, which is something a lot of people forget. So if you're getting ganked and you're just like, oh, crap, someone's coming in behind us, you can always dredge line out and get away from them. So that's really handy. Has a very large range. And when you are actually trying to land your hook, a really underestimated aspect of this is this hitbox is huge on him, right? It's probably, like, no joke, like 3 times as wide as a Thresh hook. It is a really, really massive hitbox. So if they are, and it's an instant cast, like, you do not wind up. Thresh winds up for a half a second. Pyke has to charge up, I think, for at least half a second before he can throw his spear. This is instant. You just see him, they're exposed, boom, you just throw it at them. So it's got a pretty fast missile speed. It's got a huge hitbox. It has no wind up to it. So it's fantastic. And it pulls you in close to them, right? So you just get right on top of them, you deal damage. So yes, you cannot hook over walls, which is something that every other hook champion can do. But in exchange for that, it's really easy to hit them open field. And you can save yourself or just rotate around the map a lot more quickly by using this dredge line. The cooldown on your Q goes down by 50% if you hit a wall with it. And it refunds a lot of the mana costs. So you can actually use this to just kind of zip around the map a lot faster. So Titan's Wrath does give you a decent shield. It's on a long cooldown. It's not the biggest base shield in the world, and it has very low scaling. It only goes up by 10 and 1% of your max health. It does some extra magic damage on the side, but it's okay. I really wish they would make the shield bigger and just get rid of the damage portion. It's just like kind of awkward. I don't know. Riptide, you want to be maxing this first. It's really strong wave clear and does a lot of damage in team fights in particular. Single target, it can do up to 350 damage. Now, it's not always going to do that amount. It depends on how many of the little waves they get hit by. But it's going to do quite a bit. So the damage scales, the slow scales, the cooldown scales down. And so it's really powerful. Now, this makes him one of the only tanks that has really good wave clear as well. So this allows you to push in, get priority, go contest scuttles, go try to roam mid lane, go get deep vision in the jungle. So it's really handy to have this. So it's a ton of damage. A notable thing here is it also applies a slow to everybody. The reason that's important is you can take Font of Life, which is going to put a debuff on anyone that you slow. And then if your allies attack that person, then they get healed for a nominal amount, usually like maybe 10 to 15 health, kind of in the mid game. But the important thing about that is that heal counts as a heal from you. It is not like lifesteal for them, right? It's a heal coming from you to them. Why is that important, you might ask? Because that can trigger Ardent Sensor. Okay, and I've been talking about this for a long time, but this really doesn't get a lot of screen time. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, AP Nautilus, you know, they're talking about maybe AP Nautilus middle and things like that. But Ardent Sensor gets slept on by a lot of people because it can interact with Font of Life. And this is a cheap AP item that has a lot of value to it. So keep in mind, this is one of the most overpowered, cost-efficient items in the game. It still is, even after the nerf years ago, right? So it can get up to 400% efficiency on this if everybody's benefiting from this, which everyone will, because like multiple people can even attack the same target, right? So if you go in, you engage on their tank, you slow them, they get that debuff on them. 4 people on your team all auto-attack that tank. All 4 of those people are going to get Ardent Sensor. It's not just the first person that hits him gets the heal. The heal stays on him the whole time. So that's a really, really powerful tool for Ardent Sensor. Now, are you going to get 400% efficiency? Probably not, you know, realistically, but, you know, you're probably going to get really close to 200 to 300% efficiency a lot. And what that basically means, if you get 200% efficiency, you pay 2,300 gold for this item, but you are getting 4,600 gold in value. So you're getting an extra 2,300 gold in value, which is the equivalent of 7 or 8 kills. So if you're getting 300% efficiency, you're getting like 15 extra kills in value for your team. It's not just you. It's the other people mostly that are getting a lot of the value off of this because of the attack speed and the bonus magic damage on hit that they do. So that puts him in a really unique spot. There aren't really many other like mainstream tanky engage type of champs that could comfortably get Ardent Sensor. I mean, maybe something like Gragas, maybe Galio, potentially. But Nautilus is definitely on the agenda because he can spam that E2 all the time. So this is just constantly going to be up in fights. Now, the problem with this, obviously, is you're going to be squishy if you get this. But he does have nice AP ratios. They just buffed his AP ratio. So he has a 0.9 on his Q, which is crazy. And then he also has a 0.8 here. So that's a lot of damage. So the AP is not just troll on him anymore. It does pretty decent damage. Even off of this, it has 40%. And this Riptide has 60%. So it's pretty decent damage that you can do on him with AP. And then, of course, he's going to love the cooldown reduction. That's always great. Mana regen, pretty nice. He does burn through a lot of mana when he's, you know, spamming his E. Heal and shield power. He does have a shield. You know, so he does gain some benefit from that. Obviously, not as much as a lot of other enchanters, but it's decent. So it's not like these are completely wasted stats. Movement speed, that's always good. So it's still like pretty good stats on him. Just the downfall is that you can potentially get blown up with this. So, you know, this could be good if you have a super fed AD carry, like a Vayne or a Kaisa or, you know, some other on-hit champ that really, really wants Ardent. It could be good. Or if their team's just lacking a lot of damage, you know, if you're facing like Ezreal, Janna, bot lane or something, you might be able to get away with this. Aftershock does give you a lot of leeway. So I think a trade pattern with him, if you want to go Ardent Sensor, and I wouldn't get it first probably, you know, maybe consider it like second or third. You could get something like, Zeke's first, and then go Ardent Sensor, and then it'd be kind of like Lulu, where you get the double on-hit interaction, because they're going to be getting on-hit from Ardent Sensor, on-hit from Zeke's, and you're getting extra attack speed with Ardent Sensor, so that they get more triggers off of Zeke's, and you're able to keep them still, kite better with the Zeke's passive. So I think that could be a really powerful interaction. It's just Zeke's and Ardents. That gives you the flat mana off of Zeke's and gives you some mana regen off of Ardent. So I could definitely see that working. You're going to be a little on the squishy side with that once again, but you're doing a ton of extra damage. You're giving your AD carry a lot of extra damage, so, you know, they can't do damage to you if they're dead. So it may not matter if you're squishier if you're giving a lot more kill threat. So that could be something interesting to think about. If you're against an all AD team, you could even go something like Frozen Heart early. That gives you a ton of armor, and it's going to give you 20% CDR, which is really handy. And then you could go Ardent Sensor after that. So, I don't know. I feel like it could fit into some build somewhere. I'm not sure where. I don't think you would rush Ardent, but I think it's in the conversation somewhere. And you could even get like a Redemption or something after this, and just kind of go like Zeke's into Enchanter build, potentially. You also have the option, I mean, you could go first item, Knight's Vow. That would give you some extra armor as well and give you some extra protection on your AD carry. And then I think isn't Knight's Vow all damage that they do? %12 of the damage your partner deals heals you. So yeah, I mean, that could be really nice. Knight's Vow is pretty cost efficient as well. It's 123%. That's not 200 to 300%, but it's still pretty good. It also adds some extra protection to your ally, so you could maybe go for something like a Knight's Vow into Ardent. The problem is you're going to run out of mana if you do that. I think you need a mana item early. So I think that like Zeke's into Ardent if you want to greed, or you can go Zeke's into Knight's Vow. But I think that's an option. But you don't even have to do that. You don't even have to get cute for this to be powerful. Right, you could just go, you're kind of straight up, like your Zeke's into Knight's Vow into Locket or something like that, and still be really powerful. Because he has, like I said, his hook is very unique in that it can save you. It has a huge hits box. That's awesome. You got the shield. You have the AoE. And then his ult. This is so great against mobility, because no one's dodging this. Vayne's not going to tumble away from this. Lucian's not dodging it. Ezreal's not dodging it. You're getting hit by this, okay? Like, the only way you're getting out of this is if you have a Zhonya's, so be careful using it on Zhonya's users, or just something else that makes you untargetable. And it can hit multiple people. Don't forget about that in a team fight, right? If you cast this on the back line and it has a pretty good range, you know, you put this on their Jinx that's on the back line, and it runs over the two frontliners, it's still knocking them up and doing damage. Up to a 2.5 second stun. Actually, up to a 3 second stun. 2 seconds at max rank. And then, so 1 second knock up, 2 second stun. That's a hell of a lot of CC. That can be applied to multiple people. It's only on 120 second cooldown. So Nautilus, I mean, Nautilus might be the runaway, like, best support on this patch. I'm not going to go that far. I do think he's tier 1. I mean, he's my highest hard engage. I don't, he doesn't, is he even listed? Yeah, here he is. He's at 50%. So I think a lot of people just have a problem with overestimating how tanky they think he is early, and they die a lot. Because he's not as tanky as something like an Alistar or a Braum who's going in. But I think if you play him back a little bit more, kind of like the Thresh build where he goes Redemption and Locket, where you just kind of engage, you know, maybe CC 1 or 2 people and then use your E and then walk back out and just focus on peeling the AD carry instead of sitting in combat and getting hit by all of the AoE. I think that he can be pretty good. So I'd probably go, you could also go Ninja Tabby instead of Mobility Boots. Now, Mobility Boots are really good on him, but remember your hook can help you get around the map too a little bit faster. So you could go Ninja Tabby. That would give you some extra survivability, rush Equinox, and then go, you know, Zeke's into Ardent. I might try that out tonight. I think it could be really good. I think it could be a lot of fun. But I hear people talking about AP. You know, they're like, well, he has these AP ratios, but especially support Nautilus. You know, he really can't do anything with that. It's like Ardent Sensor, people. Font of Life, Ardent Sensor. So you can be on the front lines here. You can get this. You heard it from the strategy professor. Could be a good option in some cases. Let me look on u.gg just really quickly. I know people have been talking about Nautilus mid, and that's not really the subject of this video. But I just want to see sort of what's going on. Most people are still playing him support. As you can see, that's nowhere on anyone's radar. Like, nobody's getting Ardent Sensor. And I think it's just because they don't understand how Font of Life interacts with that item. Because it's really, really good on him. Especially now that you have the extra 30% AP ratio on a Q. I think it definitely is worth considering. Now let's look at pro builds. Okay, so he's not like tearing it up. There's a lot of like all caps video. Oh my god, Nautilus video, Nautilus middle, OP. It's like, yeah, not really. Not really. He's 49% win rate overall, and he's like almost never played middle. So maybe like there are some ways he could be played middle. I did see a good jungle Nautilus. So I think it's possible. I mean, he could be mid for sure, but I still think support's going to be his best place. He has been played historically as a support, as a counter pick to Thresh. But I think especially against things like, even things like Leona or Pyke, he can be pretty good. Because he can give you the enchanter scaling with the personal tankiness. Because he's definitely going to be tankier than like, you know, a Janna or a Lulu. So, anyways, I think he's probably the most interesting pick on this patch. Even though I'm not quite ready to say that he's going to be over the enchanters. Okay. I mean, some of that could be, like I said, people just aren't building him optimally. Because just no one's thinking of Ardent Censer. But anyways, Janna, still going to be really strong. I did bump her up here a lot because there are so many divers right now. And that's kind of her specialty. Now, she personally can get blown up by stuff like that, right? So she is kind of weak to your Pykes, to your Leonas, your Heckrums, your Jarvans. But if she does not personally get hit by that stuff, then she can peel other people pretty well. I mean, this ult, not only does it heal for a ludicrous amount with really high scaling, but it also pushes people back. So if they dunk you or they dunk your AD carry with Jarvan and they don't immediately kill you, you can Monsoon, knock them out, and just reset the fight and heal everybody. So that's really strong. And then, of course, you have the shield, which is pretty good. It's been nerfed a lot over time. But once you max it out, it gets down to 10 seconds, 210 base. But this is the thing that a lot of people underestimate, this extra AD. And it has an AP ratio on it of 0.1. So that means if you can get to, like, you know, even 100 AP off of, like, Ardent Censer plus your runes, you're going to be giving out 50 extra AD to your AD carry. So once again, that is a lot, like we talked about earlier. You know, that's like somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 gold value, depending on how much, you know, AP you have here for scaling. So that's really, really powerful, particularly on crit users. So on someone like a Jinx, that's very, very strong because, of course, the AD can crit. So if you crit with an Infinity Edge off of 40 AD, that's effectively you're adding an extra 100 damage to their attack. So that's a lot. I mean, you're increasing their DPS probably by, I don't know, a lot. I mean, whatever their AD is, what is their AD going to be? Like maybe 200? A lot of those crit champions are double zeal item users. So like 150, something like that, and you're giving them 50 AD. You're basically giving them like 30% more damage off of that. So it's really, really good. Now, if they break this shield, then they lose the AD. So sometimes it is better just to put this on your AD carry in a fight, even if they aren't taking damage, just so that you give out that extra AD. You have to sort of make that decision yourself. Do you want to shield someone on the front line, or do you want to buff up your AD carry? But it's something interesting to think about. But the big thing about Janna, too, is she's just really, really fast. So she can rotate around the map easily, show up to plays, she can get deep wards. Just speed is highly underestimated by a lot of people. Just getting there, you know, 2 seconds faster than the enemy support can make the difference in whether or not you win or lose that fight. So when you're trying, excuse me, when you're trying to race that Soraka across the map, and you get there, like I said, 2 or 3 seconds earlier, that can decide games. So the fact that she gets a ton of extra movement speed off of her W is really, really good. And to an extent, she scales with movement speed as well. So a certain percentage of your movement speed goes towards on-hit magic damage on your basic attacks and your Zephyr. So when you get things like mobility boots, you add an extra, you know, good chunk of damage to your Zephyr and autos. So it's handy. It's handy. And she helps her allies move around too. So, you know, they get an extra 8% bonus movement speed when allies are moving towards her. So it's basically like you're giving them a brown boot to run around with you. Now, a lot of the popular enchanters can help their allies run around. So like Lulu can help one ally run around with her, you know, with her W. Sona can help people run around with her E. You know, Nami, to an extent, can kind of help people run with her spells. So it's not as unique as it used to be a long time ago, but it's still really nice that it passively can help your entire team rotate. So that's good. Now, Howling Warp Gale is very good against a lot of popular interactions right now. It does stuff Hecarim, and it's very easy to stuff the Hecarim if he doesn't ult. You can stop his Q from going through. You can stop Jarvan from flag and dragging if you time it correctly. Once again, if he doesn't ult or flash it. You can stop Rek'Sai from tunneling onto you. You can stop a lot of these like dive champions from getting on you or your AD carry. So she's very, very good at that. She's the peel queen historically, and she still scales really well. And she has some game in the lane. I mean, she's not that great in the lane, but, you know, you can actually add some decent harass, especially against a melee support. You know, just sitting there spamming your W on people can do some pretty good damage. It has been nerfed over time. It used to do 280. So it has been nerfed, but she's very good against divers, and there's a lot of divers right now, and she's very good with in a meta where AD carries are doing a lot of damage, where they're very important. So both of those are true right now. AD carries are very good, and divers are very good. So I think that's handy. And once again, you are squishy yourself, but you do offer protection from some of those hard engaged champs. Okay, so just Airy Mana Flow. I would switch off of Absolute Focus and do Transcendence, because you don't have a heal in the laning phase, and so you can drop below, so getting that 10% CDR is nice. And then Water Walking can be good, but you can also do Scorch or Gathering Storm can be pretty good too. Now, getting AP to buff up her shield is particularly nice, because that means it's not going to break as quickly, which means that whoever you give it to is going to keep their AD for longer. So that's handy. Then I'll just go Mobility Boots, Ardent, Redemption. You could also go Athenes before Redemption if you want, but I think that Ardent is very good because they get the extra attack speed, and because you have that steroid off of the extra AD, then I think that's really handy. Now, one thing about Janna is she can't spread Ardent as easily as like Lulu and Nami, because her only ability that targets allies is her shield. So Lulu and Nami can both use other abilities. Lulu can use W, which will put Airy on somebody, and then Nami can use her E, which will put Airy on somebody. So they can more easily spread Ardent Sensor to a bunch of different targets, assuming Janna doesn't use her ult or like a Redemption or something to do it. Someone recommended, I think it might have been Uranenizak on the channel, that you could go Font of Life on her as well. You're going to be a little squishier, so you kind of have to, you know, measure this and see if it's worth it or not, because you're not going to have bone plating. But if you slow somebody with your W, then everyone on your team can get Ardent Sensor by attacking them. So I think that's... I wouldn't do that on Nami, Lulu, or Sona, because they can distribute Ardent Sensor so well. But on Janna, because she can't distribute it very well, because she can only put it on one person normally at a time, then you might consider doing Font of Life, particularly if you have another champion on your team who benefits very heavily from Ardent Sensor and that extra attack speed. So if you have something like a Kench or a Master Yi, or just any of those other like really popular kind of auto attack type of champions, then you know, that might be something to consider. And then I would, but most circumstances, I'd probably just go Ardent, Redemption, Mikhail's. Okay, Mikhail's is situational, obviously, but if you're going to already have Ardent and Redemption, it's a really nice buff, especially if you have Redemption, because it's going to make your Redemption just heal like an insane amount. It's just going to take everyone to full HP automatically. Because remember, Redemption has triple scaling with plus healing and shielding. Okay. Pyke, I think, is actually climbing up. He is pretty good. I know a lot of people have been very high on Pyke for a while. I know Bizzleberry really loves Pyke. I mean, he's nice. The thing about him, though, is his itemization just requires you to be ahead. So if you fall behind, then he can feel really bad. You kind of do need to go for the AD build on him as well. The tank build is not nearly as good as it used to be. He was tier 1 for me back when his tank build was really good, and I think most people considered him tier 1. But now he's a bit squishier, so he can have a problem against some all-in type of champs, other all-in champs, probably like Nautilus. But he's very good against squishy mages. So, and he's very good against shields also. So that's really important to note, because his ult executes through a shield. So he'll just like ult somebody straight through a Janna shield or through a Lulu shield or whatever. So that does make him particularly good against enchanters in that respect. Now, Lulu's infusion of health off of her ult can stop the death from below. But it's really nice. So if you do get a couple of kills, you do have mechanics to get the gold to power through your build, right? Because you get a lot of extra gold generated if you're getting kills from your death from below. So that is very handy. They did buff him a couple of patches ago. I think they lowered the cooldown on his Bone Skewer, I believe. I think that's what they did. And then his Phantom Undertow stuns for a little bit longer. So that's handy. I thought it was 1.0 to 1.15. It looks like it's went up a quarter of a second. And then you get an extra 0.1 per 10 lethality. I forgot it has that scaling on it. So that's actually really nice. if you go for the lethality. Because I think, what, each lethality item, is it, well, actually, each lethality item gives, what, like 20 lethality, so I guess that's not that crazy. But it's still giving you an extra 0.2 off your first item and probably like 0.2 off your second item. So you can get it up to like a, you know, almost like a 1.75 stun, which is really nice. It can stun multiple people as well. But he has some good stuff. Like, he's kind of unique compared to a lot of other hook champions. It is on a lower cooldown. It has a fairly low mana cost compared to some of the others. And he's invisible, right? So invisible champions are almost always going to be really strong because they're heavily underestimated by most enemies. They just don't expect him to be there. Now, he does put that debuff out there, but it's still difficult to tell exactly what angle he's coming from. And it gives him a lot of extra movement speed. So this does allow you, if you get ahead early, you can rotate to the mid lane and try to make plays. An underestimated part of his kit also is you can ward deep in the jungle very safely because you can activate Ghost Water Dive and then get deep into their jungle without them seeing you, and you can drop wards without breaking stealth. If you auto-attack a ward, that breaks stealth, but if you just drop a ward, it does not break stealth. Okay? So you can just run right past any potential wards they might have if you're invisible with Moby Boots, drop some wards in the enemy jungle, and then just get out, right? And there's a good chance they may not see it if you're dropping those wards in bushes. So I think that that is really an underestimated aspect of his kit. You can also get away really easily. So that's something most other hook champs have a hard time getting away. Nautilus can kind of get away, but like Pyke, depending on, you know, how you use his abilities, can really get away. The dude's almost impossible to gank. He's like super fast when he goes invisible, and he's invisible, and he can undertow away, right? So he can jump away, and not only is it a jump, but it also stuns anyone that tries to follow him. So he's almost impossible to run down on ganks. So if you suspect you're going to get camped, then he could be a good choice there. So he's handy, particularly with really heavy kill lanes. Then he can be pretty good. I think with Draven, I think if you get the kill, then Draven still cashes in his gold. Although I'm not 100%. I think they get credit for it. So I'm not 100. Does it show it here? Does it talk about Draven? I'm not sure if you KS the Draven, if he gets the gold or not. I'm pretty sure they still get the credit under their, like, kill tab. Maybe not. I'm not sure about that one. But either way, you know, he's good with a lot of kill lanes. And so if he does get that gold, it is nice. If you get Ghost Blade, or, excuse me, Dust Blade, that's actually really handy too, because that's basically like having an extra sweeper on a lower cooldown. So that gives you even better vision control. So I think he's really solid. You know, if you land those hooks, he is very good. He does have great roam potential. He has great scaling potential. He can cut through a lot of shields, which is really handy. That's really good when you're going up against like Phantom Dancers or Steric Gauges and things like that as well. If they get to a certain low threshold and they get a big shield, you can cut through that. Certain champions like Poppy, who can get a pretty big shield as well, can be handy. And it cuts through a lot of resists also. I mean, it's just a straight execute if they're at a certain level of health. So it doesn't matter if they have Aftershock rolling in. It doesn't matter if they have a 10,000 shield. You know, if they're at 400 health and you have enough to execute, you're going to execute. So I think that does make him very useful in some specific situations. So he's a bit lower. Some people might have him tier 1. I just have him a bit lower because if you do fall behind, it can feel really, really tough to do anything useful in the game. And he doesn't have a lot of protection. So, like, if that Jarvan or that Hecarim is diving your AD carry, there's not a lot you can do about that. You know, you can try to slow them, you know, with your Q, or maybe try to peel them off. You know, you can try to stun them with your Phantom Undertow, but really a lot of this stuff is not that great. Not that great at peeling, so he's okay. Just there are some circumstances right now where he can definitely fall behind and have a rough time. I think his win rate, like I said, his win rate's pretty good. It's like 50%, so he's one of the better engaged champs right now, but that's an issue. You're also not very tanky at all with this build. So you do have resistance to harassment in the laning phase because you get all that extra healing off of your passive, but you can still get blown up if you get CC'd, so just keep that in mind. Aftershock does help some with that, but that still could potentially be a weakness. Leona's another one. Leona got some huge buffs last patch. Not a lot of people are still playing her, but I still think she's going to be really strong, particularly into things like Sona, Lulu, Nami, things that don't have escapes that are really easy to catch out and blow up. She is risky. If you get camped, if you get ganked, you have no escapes. But she does have a lot of CC. I do think with the buffs to Nautilus recently and just his itemization options, so the fact that he can go something like Ardent Sensor, I think second or third item, I think he's just going to outcompete her at this point. I think he's just buffed up so much, and he just does so many more things than she does. One thing about Leona, she can engage through the minion wave during the laning phase. So if you're looking for like the best hyper aggression hard engage, I still think that she's in the conversation for the laning phase, because Nautilus has to have open field to hook. Now his hook is longer than hers, I think. I think his is 1100. I feel like hers is going to be like 900 or something, her E. I could be wrong about that. 875, yeah. So his hook is further. So he has longer and it's a wider hitbox. So if it's open field, his hook is definitely easier to hit. If it's like through minion wave, obviously it's going to be easier to position with her. But, I mean, this was a really big cooldown buff for her. The problem is you don't max this until second. You still have to max your W first in a lot of cases. So like, this is really good in the like kind of the late game, but it doesn't do a lot for you early. She does have a 90-second cooldown ult, though, which is really good. So I think she is good. I would just pick her if you want like maximum hyper aggression in the lane. You have like a Draven or a Jhin or something, and you think you're really going to be able to leverage that, especially if they have an immobile team. So if they have like a Jinx or a Twitch, a Diana, you know, something like that, then this is a super good form of CC on a low cooldown. However, if they have Ezreal, you know, Lucian, Vayne, those types of champs, which are all very common right now, even Kai'Sa to an extent, they can dodge the Solar Flare. Nautilus, remember, they can't dodge. So Nautilus is way better against mobile champs, but I could see that Solar Flare could potentially be better against stationary champs. And she has higher burst damage that she puts out, too, because of her Sunlight procs than Nautilus does. Nautilus does more, like, steady damage over time. Although with the new, like, hook damage and the AP scaling on it, if you get some AP, like an Ardent Sensor or something, you could potentially blow some people up. So definitely someone to consider here, though. So I'll just go Aftershock, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching, and then just Footwear, Cosmic Insight's probably the way to go. And then there's your standard Eye of the Aspect, Zeke's, Knight's Vow, Locket. Okay, Morgana, kind of fallen by the wayside. She can be really strong, but the problem is like her scaling is very limited. You know, her stun is always really good if you hit it. Black Shield is good, but you know what Black Shield doesn't help out against a lot? Jarvan. You know, Jarvan dunks your 80 carry, you put a Black Shield on him, not going to matter. They're not running out of that unless they have Flash, and Jarvan's still doing full damage because he does all physical damage. And Black Shield only blocks magical attacks. Also, Hecarim. Now, yes, you can stop the fear, you know, but Hecarim can still one-shot a lot of the time, even if he doesn't get the fear on him, because you're not blocking any physical damage with that shield. You know, if they have a really fed Vayne that's running down your 80 carry, Black Shield not going to do anything. So there's a lot of physical damage out there right now. Zed, not going to do anything. Zed did get nerfed this patch, but he's still strong. So it's good in like a meta where you're against a lot of like heavy CC. So it can be a pretty good pick into Nautilus. Unless he gets enough AP to break your shield, that can be pretty handy. It can be really good against Thresh. But in general, she just doesn't add any steroids. Like, she doesn't give your 80 carry any attack speed. She doesn't give him any AD. Her CC is kind of limited. She's got her Q, which is nice. She has her ult, which can be good situationally. But she's got a lot of problems right now. Now, a lot of people will ban her because it's just so annoying to have to deal with Black Shield. And particularly if the enemy team, yeah, she's got a 55% ban rate. If the enemy team has like a Master Yi or a Jinx or something that does get super fed and you don't have a diver that can deal with them, like a Hecarim or a Jarvan or something like that, then it can be a nightmare. Like, you just can't, especially Master Yi, if you, you know, Black Shield him and he goes in, it's just like almost impossible to deal with that. So there are situations where she can be really good, particularly if you have a chain CC comp bottom. So if you hit him with a Morg Bind and then, like Caitlyn traps him or something like that, that's pretty disgusting. Something like Jhin with his W, they get Morg Binded into Jhin W. That can be pretty nasty. So there are some good team comps for her, and there are definitely some situations where she can be very strong, but I think she's kind of a situational pick. You're very rarely going to lose lane with her, though. I mean, you can just kind of go even and just, you know, lightly push with your W, and, you know, she's pretty safe. So she's all right. She's all right, but I just think she gets outscaled by some of these other champs. Okay, Thresh, he's always good. If you're a one-trick Thresh player, he's always going to be amazing. So, you know, there is that. It's just a lot of other type of hook champions are coming up right now, most notably Nautilus. Nautilus is very good into Thresh in particular. He's just tankier than Thresh. He has more CC than Thresh. He's easier to execute than Thresh. He's easier to play. So I think Nautilus is going to outshine him, but Thresh does have his Lantern. He just has more utility, more tools in terms of, like, you can peel people a lot better. So, you know, Thresh can flay back a Jarvan. He can flay back a Hecarim as long as they don't ult. He can flay back a Zac. You know, a lot of engaged champs, he's going to have some answers to it. And, of course, his Lantern can get people out of some sticky situations, too. So they're all pretty good. But later in the game, he's pretty low damage. Early game, he does quite a bit with his auto attacks. But later in the game, he's kind of low damage. His scaling is pretty weak compared to a lot of other champs out there. He can't really comfortably get Eye of the Equinox. He's kind of forced a lot of times into getting stuff that's suboptimal on him, like Redemption and Locket, which are okay, but once again, it's not going to be as good on him as it is on other champions because he's considered ranged. Like Knight's Vow is only half value. Zeke's isn't amazing because he has a long cooldown, and people have to be like in close range to make that work. So there's a lot of stuff about him, especially with items and runes that just aren't amazing right now, but his kit is really fantastic. So if you use his kit very well, if you're hitting the hooks, if you're getting the right lanterns, if you're flaying people back, he can have a huge impact. But I think he's working uphill in terms of like raw stats, right? I just think that a lot of other champs just have better baseline stats in their kit, and they just work better with certain runes or certain items a lot better than he does. So he still can be powerful, but I think I dropped him down just a little bit just because of the rise of some of these other champs competing for him for the same type of thing. You know, like Nautilus, like Leona, who have both had some substantial buffs over the last few patches. And then Tahm Kench, finally, I think he deserves to be up here just because you can completely take over a game with Tahm Kench's macro if you're really good on him. Obviously, most people don't do that because he's got a 44% win rate. But I think he's worth discussing, particularly if you have like a Jinx on your team, like an immobile 80 carry. He can be very, very good because he is the answer. You know, if they have that Jarvan or if they have that Hecarim or whatever that's really hard to peel, as long as you're not getting chain CC'd and feared, you can save people from a lot of that, or from, you know, Thresh hooks, Morg binds. There's a lot of stuff he can save people from. But his weaknesses are pretty obvious. You know, his scaling is very limited. Like, his stats are pretty awful. He does not have good itemization for the most part. I mean, he can get... you know, like Knight's Vow into, why am I blanking on the item? Eye of the Equinox. You could also get Zeke's. One trick with Tahm Kench a lot of people don't know is you can activate his ult and then cancel it immediately in a team fight if you have it available, and it'll activate the Zeke, so your AD carry gets the bonus, and then your ult only goes on a 10-second cooldown. So that's a nice little trick, so that you can actually use Zeke's if you're not, like, if your ult isn't on cooldown, basically. So that's kind of handy. You don't want to, like, never use your ult. You still want to be able to use your ult, so don't like save your ult just so you can do this trick in team fights. But it's a nice option that's there to just be aware of. Now, where Tahm Kench's real power lies not only is the saving, which a lot of people know about, but is his macro with his ult is really, really strong. So if you're dealing with a jungler, especially against a lot of these immobile bot lanes now, right, you're going to be seeing a lot of, like, you know, Sona Jinx type of lanes. If you can warp in behind them with Tahm Kench plus Hecarim or Jarvan, that's a double kill. Like, that's so easy. That's double kill into Dragon, or double kill into, like, 2 plates, right? So that can completely change the game. If you just get 2 of those plays in the early to mid game, just your first and second ult, you convert and get 1 or 2 kills and gain an advantage in the lane, that could determine the whole game. So it's like, yeah, he doesn't scale, but if you really leverage his ult and make some really good plays around the map, particularly warping behind bot lane and getting double kills, he can completely dictate a game. Also, late game, he just completely stuffs split push strategies a lot of times too, because you can warp up there and kill the person who's trying to split push by themselves a lot of times. So it makes it very difficult to try to do anything on the map macro-wise. Or if you win a team fight, you know, you can warp over and start, you can, you know, grab a tower. You know, you win a team fight mid lane and there's a wave pushing bot lane, right? You can warp your AD carry over to that wave immediately, save yourself that, you know, 20-second walk, grab that tower, and maybe even grab a second tower. So it's really all about how well you use this ult. The problem with that, obviously, is people have to cooperate with you, with Tahm Kench. That's the issue. If you save somebody with your W, they can just spit themselves right back out and die. And that happens a lot, and it sucks. If the jungler just never comes down, no matter how many times you ping your ult, or you start your ult and you tell people to rotate, your AD carry never clicks on it, then he's going to be a lot weaker. Because if you're just showing up to team fights just like auto-attacking stuff and using your Q, you're way worse than any other support in the top 10. But if you're using that macro correctly, if you're getting those good saves on high-priority targets with your W, then he can be really good. And this is why he's good in pro play, why he's pretty good in Challenger, but why he's terrible in lower elos. So it just depends on how well you do it. He works much better if you have a duo jungler that's playing something aggressive early. So I have him in there. I think he's unique. I think he's powerful. No one else really does what he does. And so I think that just those unique traits and his ability, his potential power, nets him a spot on my top 10. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this video. I'll just really quickly just mention the other ones right here. I really intended this to be under an hour. That's why I was going to focus on the top 10. I need to try to get these under an hour for YouTube, like ranking or whatever, but I also don't want to shortchange the information. So hopefully you learned some stuff. Hopefully you got some good info here. Soraka can be good. She's just more vulnerable than Sona, I think. At least Sona has her ult to protect herself. Sona also has a reliable speed up with her E to rotate around the map a little bit quicker. And I think Sona beats her in 5v5 contributions because Sona heals herself and heals her ally, and she isn't screwed as much by executioners because a lot of her power derives from her shielding off of her W. So she also plays way better with Ardent Sensor and Athenes. So I just think that Sona just has better itemization, has better overall team fighting, is going to be safer, and is a little bit more insulated from Grievous Wounds effects. So Soraka can be good. Sorry, Ed. I know Ed loves Soraka. A lot of people love Soraka on the channel. I still think she can be good. Also, another thing is you have to actually hit your Qs in lane to be effective with her, which doesn't sound hard, but it actually can be a lot more difficult than it seems, particularly as you start moving up in elo, versus someone like Nami or Sona, you just like press your button and right click on them, right, to get an auto attack plus a spell. There are no skill shots for your harassment. So really, I think you're just working harder as Soraka to get a similar effect that you could get primarily with Sona, but even with some of these other enchanters. So she can be really good. She can take over the game. She does have a good win percentage. I just think she gets outcompeted by Sona, who's doing trying to do a very similar thing. Rakan, he is getting changed next patch, so stay tuned. I do like what I see on the changes so far, but right now he just has some huge problems. Like, he's not great against heavy CC, does not have a good time against someone like Nautilus. He has very limited peel if like a Hecarim or a Jarvan's jumping on your AD carry. He has some, but he's primarily like a hard engage champ is what he does. It's like kind of light on the enchanter side. Like, he's got some healing and shielding, but there's already a lot of engage. Like, everybody's playing Hecarim and Jarvan. I mean, like, everybody's playing these champions, and they're so strong right now. If we look here, win percentage, you know, we've got Vi, we've got Hecarim, we've got Jarvan. All of these mega popular. Now, Hecarim's still only like 12%, but Jarvan's like 21%. Like, everyone's playing Jarvan. Lee also engages to an extent. So, like, the top 3 most popular by a mile are all pretty hard engaged champs. So, you don't need that engage as much as Rakan as you did, you know, a few patches ago when everyone was playing Kha'Zix or when everyone was playing Xin Zhao and things like that. So, he's still going to be pretty good. He just has kind of a really rough laning phase. He can get bullied out early. He is weak to CC, and those nerfs were absolutely brutal to his W. So they are trying to rectify that some in the next patch, so stay tuned. But for right now, I think he's in the top 15. I just don't think he's in the top 10. Galio, great in pro play, not that great in solo queue. It just requires a lot more coordination so you can use your ult properly. He has a decent pick into other tanks. You notice there aren't a lot of tanks up here outside of Nautilus, but like maybe into Nautilus, maybe against Alistar, maybe against something like Blitzcrank. He could be a pretty good pick, but I think there are probably going to be better options. Braum, very good in Challenger and Pro Play, limited in solo queue. He just doesn't scale very well with items over time. His shield is always pretty strong, but once again, does not offer a lot to protect against Jarvan and Hecarim running at your AD carry. They're just going to run right through your shield, and they're going to kill him before you do anything. So I think that's a big issue, and you're just going to get outscaled by Sona and things like Sona, Janna, Lulu, all those champs in team fights, buffing up their AD carry. You know, when you have something like a Vayne sitting there attacking and they have something like a, you know, a Lulu-empowered Jinx, it's just going to be really, really hard to deal with that. Like, yeah, you could kind of deal with it if you know, position properly around your shield, but it's going to be rough out there. So he's okay. But I think he's much more of an early game, kind of low gold economy type of champ that gets outscaled. Zyra can still be really strong. If you take over the game early and you start snowballing, getting plates, getting items, denying a lot of gold from the enemy team, she can definitely do well, but you have to dominate. Absolutely crush the lane. because if you let that Sona get to 2 items, if she gets 2 Athenes plus Ardent Censer or plus Redemption, you're done. If you're not like 2,000 gold ahead of her, because her items are cheaper than yours and they are a lot more cost efficient than yours are. So very difficult to deal with that. They've also nerfed Ignite, they nerfed Dark Harvest, they nerfed Electrocute, and they directly nerfed Zyra's plants. So she can still win, but you have to completely crush people. And a lot of the 80 carries right now are not designed to crush lane. You know, you have a Kaisa in your lane, you have an Ezreal, you have a Vayne. These types of champs are not going to help you dominate early. So you can screen for them. You can buy them time to farm, which is nice. You can apply some extra pressure. That's good. But it's not like, you know, maybe 7 patches ago or 8 patches ago in the preseason, you know, when we had everybody was playing Jhin, or everybody was playing like this Lethality Misfortune, or, you know, just a variety of these burst type of champions, right? So the times have changed. She still is good if you're silver and lower, you know, and you can really abuse people with her. She can still work, but she's definitely not as strong as she once was. And then these champions are okay. You can play them if you're really good on them, I guess, but I would probably stick to the top 15. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out a ton. Come check out the stream. It starts around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time most nights. We'd love to have you. It's a great, friendly community. I should have an 80 carry tier list either out tonight or maybe tomorrow at some point, so stay tuned for that as well. And check out the rest of the content on the channel also. We have a coaching tier list, which is amazing. I think we have over 170 coaching sessions on there, so if you want to watch me help other people learn how to improve and you want to learn some yourself, that's always free to access that. We have topical guides like Does Luck Exist in League of Legends, How to Macro Better, How to Micro Better, Best One-Trick Champions, like over 40 or 50 guides on the channel, and I've got some more stacked up that I'm going to be doing soon. So just stay tuned for all of that. Check all of it out. Tons of content on the channel. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see everybody next time.